Welcome to Dream Stories by Dasha, your space for sleep, calm, and gentle night stories. Here you will find everything for your best sleep. If you enjoy this channel, don't forget to subscribe and like this video so you don't lose this place of peace. Now, close your eyes and slowly let go. She first noticed it on a quiet night. It wasn't a sound, and it wasn't something she could see. It felt more like a shift, as if something in the world had moved slightly out of place. She lay in bed, staring into the darkness, waiting for sleep to come. But instead of fading away, something began to form. At first, it was faint, a soft outline of a place she had never seen before. A narrow street under dim lights, empty and still. The air felt distant, calm, but unfamiliar, like something remembered instead of imagined. She wasn't walking through it, but she wasn't outside of it either. She opened her eyes quickly. Her room was unchanged. The same walls, the same silence, the same soft light from the window. Everything felt normal again, but something stayed with her. She hadn't been asleep. That was the part she couldn't explain. The next night it returned faster, almost as if it had been waiting for her. She closed her eyes, and the world appeared more clearly. A small cafe with warm light inside, and a single person sitting alone. She could see the way they moved, the way they rested their hands on the table. It didn't feel like a dream. It didn't blur or shift like ordinary sleep. It stayed steady, real, quiet. She could almost hear something, almost feel the space around her, like she was standing just outside of it. Then the person inside slowly lifted their head and looked straight toward her. She opened her eyes again. Her heart was calm, too calm. There was no fear, only one thought. This was not just a dream. On the third night, she didn't hesitate. She lay down, closed her eyes, and waited. The moment darkness came, the world returned. Different place, same feeling. A long hallway softly lit, with closed doors on both sides. She focused, and something inside her moved forward. Not her body, but something deeper. The hallway became clearer, closer, more real with every second. For the first time, she understood. This wasn't happening to her. She was entering it. And somewhere behind one of those doors, someone else was already dreaming. She stood in the hallway for a long moment, not moving, just looking at the doors. Each one was closed, identical, quiet. There were no sounds behind them, no signs, nothing to guide her. And yet, she felt something. She began to walk, not with her body, but with that same quiet shift inside her. The hallway responded again, becoming clearer, more solid. The light softened around her, and the silence deepened, as if the space itself was listening. She stopped in front of one door. It looked no different from the rest, but the feeling was stronger here. Not urgent, not demanding, just present. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly reached for the handle. The moment her hand touched it, something changed. Not outside, but inside her. A brief sensation like stepping into cold water, followed by a strange calm. The world on the other side was immediate. A small room, dim light, a window with curtains barely moving. Someone was sitting on the edge of a bed, their back turned toward her. The air felt heavier here, filled with something quiet and unspoken. She stepped inside. This time she felt it differently. She wasn't just observing. She was closer, almost inside the space itself. She could hear faint sounds now, the soft movement of fabric, a slow breath, the quiet weight of the moment. The person on the bed didn't turn right away. They sat still, as if lost in thought, or maybe waiting. Then slowly they spoke. "I know you're there." The words were calm, not surprised, not afraid. She froze. This had never happened before. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't made a sound. And yet, they knew. "I've seen you before," the voice continued softly. "You always stay near the door." She looked down without thinking. She was standing exactly there. For a moment, she considered stepping back, leaving, closing the door. The person slowly turned their head. Their face was unfamiliar, but the feeling wasn't. "I thought you were part of the dream," they said quietly, "but you don't feel like one." The room seemed to grow quieter around them. She tried to speak, but the words didn't come easily. It felt strange, like her voice didn't fully belong here. "I didn't mean to be here," she said finally. The person studied her for a moment, then gave a small, almost tired smile. "None of us do." Silence returned, but it felt different now. Not empty, but shared. For the first time, she understood something she hadn't expected. These weren't just dreams. They belonged to someone. When she awoke, she didn't feel like she had left the place completely. It lingered like a thin thread still connecting her to that room. The ceiling above her looked the same. The silence of her own space was still there, but something inside her had shifted. She sat up slowly. Her thoughts were quieter than before. Not empty, just arranged differently, as if part of her was still listening to something far away. That day, everything felt slightly unreal. Not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle one. The world continued as normal, but she found herself noticing details she would normally ignore. Faces, reflections, small pauses in people's movements. as if she had learned to see differently. When night came, she didn't resist sleep. She almost expected it now, and when her eyes closed, the hallway returned immediately, as if it had never gone away. But this time, something was different. The doors were no longer identical. Some of them felt heavier, others lighter. A few almost distant, like they didn't belong to her anymore. She stood still, observing, realizing that the space was responding to her awareness. She walked again, slowly. And now, she didn't just feel drawn. She felt choices. One door in particular stood out. Not because it was louder, but because it felt familiar in a way she couldn't explain. Like something she had already seen but forgotten. She reached for it, but before she touched it, she hesitated. Because now she understood something important. These were not just places she was entering. They were lives, moments, experiences that belonged to someone else. Still, the pull remained. She opened the door. The room was different this time, larger, brighter. There was a window open, and the sound of distant wind filled the space. A desk stood near the wall, covered in scattered papers. Someone was writing, not sleeping, not dreaming, writing. The person didn't notice her at first. They were focused, almost completely absorbed in what they were doing. Words filled the pages quickly, as if they couldn't stop. She stepped closer quietly, and then she saw it. The words on the paper were describing her. Not exactly as she was, but as she appeared in these spaces. The hallway, the doors, the feeling of being observed just beyond sleep. Her breath slowed. The person finally looked up. This time, there was no surprise, only recognition. "I wasn't sure when you would come back," they said calmly. She felt something tighten inside her. "You've been writing this?" she said softly. The person nodded. "Not writing," they corrected. "Recording." A pause. "You think you are borrowing dreams, but something else is happening." She didn't answer immediately. The room felt different now, less like a dream, more like a shared space between awarenesses. "What am I doing then?" she asked. The person looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "You're not entering dreams. You're crossing between them." Silence followed, and for the first time, she realized the hallway was no longer just behind her. It was everywhere. The room felt different after his words, not physically, but in the way silence behaved. It was no longer empty. It felt layered, as if something else was existing just beneath what she could see. She looked at the person in front of her, trying to understand what he meant. The idea seemed impossible at first. Other people like her, a system, a shared space between dreams. It sounded like something her mind created to explain what it couldn't accept, but the way he spoke made it difficult to dismiss. "You think you entered this recently?" he said quietly. But you didn't. You only became aware of it. She stayed silent. That sentence didn't comfort her. It unsettled her more than anything she had experienced so far. He stood up slowly and walked toward the window. Outside, there was nothing clear, just shifting shapes, like thoughts that had not fully formed into reality. There are layers to sleep, he continued. Most people never leave their own. They dream inside their boundaries, but some move between them without realizing. She stepped back slightly. If that's true, she said, why can I see it now? He turned to her. Because something opened. The words were simple, but they carried weight. She didn't ask what. She already knew he wouldn't give her a direct answer. Instead, he reached for the desk and picked up a single page. He hesitated for a moment before handing it to her. On it, there was a map. Not a real map, but a structure. Lines connecting spaces that didn't look physical. Points that shifted the longer she looked at them. This is what you're inside, he said. Her eyes moved across it slowly. The hallway, the doors, the spaces she had entered. They were there, but not as places, as connections. You are not the only one moving through it, he added. There are others, some lost, some aware, a few who guide. She looked up at him again. And you? She asked. A pause. I record what passes through, he said. I don't stay in one place long enough to belong to it. That answer didn't feel complete, but nothing here did anymore. The room began to feel unstable, like it was becoming less fixed the longer she stayed. The edges of the space softened, as if it was remembering it wasn't meant to hold her. He noticed it too. It's opening again, he said. She understood what he meant without explanation. The hallway was returning, and this time it felt wider than before. More than one path, more than one direction. Before she left, he spoke once more. Be careful which doors you learn to recognize. Some of them start recognizing you back. And then the room faded. The hallway was no longer the same. It stretched farther than before, as if it had expanded while she was gone. The doors were not just aligned in a straight line anymore. Some were slightly open, others flickered in and out of focus, like they were unsure whether they existed. She stood still for a moment, trying to understand what had changed. The silence felt different too. It wasn't empty anymore. It felt occupied, as if she had entered a space where others were already moving. Then she saw them. At first, just shapes in the distance. People standing near different doors, not interacting, not speaking, just observing or passing through as if they knew exactly where they were going. She took a step forward slowly. One of them noticed her, a woman, standing near a door that pulsed faintly with light. She turned her head slightly, studying her with quiet interest, as if recognizing something familiar. "You're new here," the woman said calmly. It wasn't a question. The girl hesitated. "I didn't choose to be here," she replied. A faint smile appeared on the woman's face. "No one does at first." She looked around again. "How many of us are there?" The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gestured toward the hallway. "Enough to keep it unstable," she said finally, "but not enough to control it." That sentence stayed with her. Before she could ask more, another figure passed behind her, then another. Some moved quickly, as if following invisible routes. Others stood still, as if waiting for something only they could hear. "This isn't just crossing dreams anymore," she said quietly. "No," the woman replied. "It never was." A pause followed. The air felt heavier, not with pressure, but with awareness. Like the space itself had become more attentive to her presence. Then the woman stepped closer. "There are rules," she said, "even if no one explains them at first." "What kind of rules?" the girl asked. "Some doors only open once," the woman said. "Some lead back to where you started, and some remember you." That last part made her uneasy. Before she could respond, the hallway shifted again, not violently, but decisively. Doors rearranging themselves slightly, like something invisible had made a choice. The woman looked past her. "It's reacting to you," she said. The girl turned slowly. For a brief moment, she saw it. A door that wasn't there before. And she knew, without understanding how, that it was waiting specifically for her. She stared at the door that had just appeared. It didn't look different from the others at first glance, but the feeling it carried was unmistakable. It wasn't passive like the rest. It felt aware, as if it had noticed her the moment she looked at it. The other traveler stepped slightly back. "That one wasn't there before," she said quietly. "I know," the girl replied, though she didn't understand how she knew. The hallway around them seemed to grow quieter, not empty, but focused, like everything else had paused just enough to watch what would happen next. She took a slow step forward. The closer she got, the stronger the feeling became. It wasn't fear, it was recognition, as if something on the other side already knew her name. "You should be careful," the woman behind her said. But the girl didn't stop. Her hand hovered near the handle. For a moment, she hesitated, not because she was afraid of what was behind it, but because she wasn't sure what would happen if it opened. Then she touched it. The moment she did, the sensation returned. That same shift she had felt in the beginning, but deeper now, heavier. Like the boundary between spaces had become thinner than before. She opened the door. What was inside was not a room like before. It was a memory, not hers, but close enough to feel like it could have been. A quiet street at night, familiar buildings, soft light reflecting on wet ground. Someone standing in the distance, waiting. She stepped inside without thinking. The air felt different here, more stable, more grounded, like this place had existed for a long time without being noticed. And then she saw movement. The figure turned slowly, and for the first time she felt something unfamiliar. Not recognition, but response. The person was looking directly at her, as if she had always been part of this moment. "You came back," the figure said softly. Her breath stopped for a moment. "I've never been here before," she replied. A quiet pause followed. "That's what they all say at first," the figure answered. The space around them felt tighter now, not physically, but emotionally, as if the moment itself was becoming more concentrated. Behind her, she could still feel the hallway, the other traveler, the system she had just begun to understand, but it already felt distant, like a place she might not be able to return to easily. The figure took a step closer, and then said something that changed everything. "You don't borrow dreams, you return to them." The words stayed in the air longer than they should have. "You return to them." She repeated them silently in her mind, trying to find a meaning that made sense. But every interpretation only made the feeling deeper, more unsettling, like something inside her was shifting without permission. The figure in front of her didn't move. It didn't rush to explain. It simply waited, as if it already knew she would understand in her own time. Behind her, the hallway still existed. She could feel it faintly, like a distant thread connecting her to something wider. The other traveler. The doors. The system she had only just begun to see. But it no longer felt like her starting point. It felt like something she had left behind. "You think you are entering other people's dreams," the figure said softly. "But that's not what's happening." She didn't answer. Her attention was fixed on every detail now. The way the air moved, the way the light shifted slightly when she breathed. Everything felt too precise, too aware of her presence. "You are not outside of this system," the figure continued. "You never were." A pause. "You are part of it." The words didn't shock her immediately. Instead, they settled slowly, like something sinking deeper than thought. She tried to reject them, to place them outside of herself, but nothing held firm anymore. "That's not possible," she said quietly. The figure tilted its head slightly. "Then why does it respond to you?" Silence. The question didn't need an answer. She thought back to the hallway, the way doors changed when she approached them, the way some seemed to recognize her before she even touched them, the way everything had begun shifting only after she became aware. Her voice lowered. "If I'm part of it, then what am I?" The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it stepped closer. "You are not visiting dreams," it said finally. "You are what allows movement between them." The space around her felt different after that sentence. Not collapsing, not expanding, but reordering itself. like reality was adjusting its understanding of her existence. Behind her, the hallway felt further away now, not gone, but no longer central, as if it was no longer where she belonged. The figure raised its hand slightly and pointed past her, not at anything visible, but at something she could feel. "You are never walking into dreams," it said. "You are waking up inside them." And for the first time, she didn't know which version of reality was the dream anymore. She stood still for a long time, not because she didn't understand the words, but because understanding them changed nothing immediately. The world around her did not collapse or reset. It simply continued existing, as if it had always included this truth, and only now allowed her to notice it. The figure watched her carefully, not with expectation, but with patience, like someone observing a system stabilizing after a correction. Finally, she spoke. "If I'm part of this," she said quietly, "then why didn't I know?" The figure turned slightly, as if considering how to explain something that had no simple version. "Because awareness is not required for function," it said. "Most parts of this system operate without knowing what they are." She looked down at her hands. They felt normal, familiar, real. Nothing about her physical sense had changed, but everything else had. "So what am I supposed to be doing?" she asked. The figure didn't answer directly. Instead, the space around them shifted subtly again. The memory-like street behind them faded, replaced for a moment by something much larger. She saw it, not as a place, but as a structure. Layers upon layers of connected spaces, hallways like the one she had been walking through, doors opening into different realities, points where paths crossed, streams of movement flowing between sleeping minds. It wasn't chaotic, it was organized, alive. "You are not the only one," the figure said. "There are others like you, some stable, some lost, some who believe they are dreaming when they are actually moving." She felt something tighten in her chest. "And what about the woman in the hallway?" she asked. "She is aware," the figure replied. "But awareness has levels. She sees parts of it, not the whole." The structure around them shifted again, and she realized something else. Every time she focused, the system responded slightly, not dramatically, just enough to acknowledge her attention. "That means I can affect it," she said slowly. The figure nodded once. "To a degree." A pause followed. "Then it reacts to me because I'm inside it," she said. "It reacts because you are part of its continuity," the figure corrected. The distinction didn't feel small. She looked around again. The hallway, the doors, the layered sense of presence behind everything. It no longer felt like something she was visiting or passing through. It felt like something maintaining itself through her awareness. "And if I stop moving?" she asked. The figure was silent for a moment. Then parts of it stabilize, it said, but other parts begin to drift. That answer stayed with her longer than the others, not as fear, but as responsibility. Behind her, she could still sense the hallway, the other traveler, the shifting doors, but now it felt like a smaller section of something much larger. She wasn't at the center of it, but she was connected to its movement, and that changed everything. Not because she didn't understand the words, but because understanding them changed nothing immediately. The world around her did not collapse or reset. It simply continued existing, as if it had always included this truth and only now allowed her to notice it. The figure watched her carefully, not with expectation, but with patience, like someone observing a system stabilizing after a correction. Finally, she spoke. "If I'm part of this," she said quietly, "then why didn't I know?" The figure turned slightly, as if considering how to explain something that had no simple version. "Because awareness is not required for function," it said. "Most parts of this system operate without knowing what they are." She looked down at her hands. They felt normal, familiar, real. Nothing about her physical sense had changed, but everything else had. "So what am I supposed to be doing?" she asked. The figure didn't answer directly. Instead, the space around them shifted subtly again. The memory-like street behind them faded, replaced for a moment by something much larger. She saw it, not as a place, but as a structure. Layers upon layers of connected spaces, hallways like the one she had been walking through, doors opening into different realities, points where paths crossed, streams of movement flowing between sleeping minds. It wasn't chaotic, it was organized, alive. "You are not the only one," the figure said. "There are others like you, some stable, some lost, some who believe they are dreaming when they are actually moving." She felt something tighten in her chest. "And what about the woman in the hallway?" she asked. "She is aware," the figure replied. "But awareness has levels. She sees parts of it, not the whole." The structure around them shifted again, and she realized something else. Every time she focused, the system responded slightly, not dramatically, just enough to acknowledge her attention. "That means I can affect it," she said slowly. The figure nodded once, to a degree. A pause followed. "Then it reacts to me because I'm inside it," she said. "It reacts because you are part of its continuity," the figure corrected. The distinction didn't feel small. She looked around again. The hallway, the doors, the layered sense of presence behind everything. It no longer felt like something she was visiting or passing through. It felt like something maintaining itself through her awareness. "And if I stop moving?" she asked. The figure was silent for a moment. "Then parts of it stabilize," it said. But other parts begin to drift. That answer stayed with her longer than the others, not as fear, but as responsibility. Behind her, she could still sense the hallway, the other traveler, the shifting doors, but now it felt like a smaller section of something much larger. She wasn't at the center of it, but she was connected to its movement, and that changed everything. Something changed in the way this space felt after that moment. Not visibly, not loudly, but unmistakably. Like a system that had registered a new variable. She noticed it first in the silence. It wasn't as open anymore. It felt observed, not by someone watching her physically, but by something that existed within the structure itself. The figure in front of her noticed it too. "They know you're aware now," it said quietly. She looked up immediately. "Who is they?" The figure didn't answer right away. Instead, the space around them darkened slightly, as if reacting to the question. "There are layers above what you've seen," it said finally. "Not dreams, not dreamers. Something closer to maintenance." That word didn't feel right. Maintenance implied control, order, structure. But everything she had seen so far felt more like movement than control. Before she could ask anything else, something happened. A distortion, not in the room, in perception itself. The edges of the space flickered for a fraction of a second, like reality had been interrupted by a signal it didn't fully process. The figure turned its head slightly. "That was fast," it said under its breath. "What was?" she asked. But the figure was no longer focused on her. Its attention was directed elsewhere, and for the first time, she felt it too. A presence, not in the hallway, not behind a door, but above it. Not physically above, structurally above, like something looking down through layers that she had never been meant to see clearly. The air tightened, not enough to suffocate, but enough to make her fully aware that the system she was inside was not static. It responded, and now it was responding to her. "You shouldn't be noticed yet," the figure said quietly. That sentence landed differently. Not like warning, like correction. She took a step back. "Noticed by what?" she asked. The figure finally looked at her again, and this time its expression had changed. Not fear, not confusion, but urgency. "By what manages transition points," it said. "By what decides which paths remain stable." A pause, and which ones get closed. Silence fell again. But it wasn't empty anymore. It felt like something had stopped moving. Not because it was gone, but because it was deciding. She understood something without being told. This system wasn't passive. It reacted to awareness. and she had just become too visible inside it. Behind her, the hallway she came from flickered faintly, not disappearing, just less certain. The figure stepped closer. "You need to choose something," it said. She looked at it. For the first time, it added, "You are not just passing through dreams. You are being tracked inside them." And somewhere deep in the structure around her, something had already begun adjusting its direction toward her. The moment she understood she was being tracked, the space around her stopped feeling like separate rooms or hallways. It became one continuous structure that was slowly tightening its focus, not closing, focusing. The figure in front of her stepped slightly closer, but its attention was still divided, as if it was receiving information she could not hear. "They are adjusting the flow," it said quietly. She looked at it. "What does that mean?" It didn't answer immediately. Instead, the environment shifted again, but this time it wasn't random. It felt directional, like something had chosen a path and was now aligning everything toward it. "Dream routes are being sealed," the figure said. "Connections are collapsing." Her chest tightened slightly. "Because of me?" A pause. "Because you are stable inside it," it said finally. "And stability draws attention." That didn't make sense at first. Then it did in a way she didn't like. She wasn't just passing through anymore, she was anchoring. Behind her, the hallway she had come from flickered again, weaker this time. Doors losing clarity, edges softening, as if the system was no longer allowing her the same access. And then she felt it, a pressure, not physical, but structural, like something was pressing against the entire network of spaces at once, testing where she existed inside it. The figure turned sharply now. "They are mapping you," it said. Her voice dropped. "Who?" But before the answer came, the space around them changed, not slowly this time, instantly. The memory-like room, the hallway sense, everything collapsed into a single point of clarity. And she saw it. A presence, not a person, not a figure, but an intelligence distributed across the structure itself. It wasn't looking at her with eyes. It was identifying her position through movement, through connection, through reaction. The figure stepped back slightly. "This is too direct," it said. She didn't move. For the first time, she felt something looking back at her from inside the system itself, not from outside, from within everything she had entered. A calm, structured awareness that did not feel emotional, only precise. And it was already adjusting. "You need to leave this layer," the figure said quickly now. She looked at it. "How?" A pause. Then, through instability. The structure around them shifted again, but this time it wasn't random distortion. It was opening fractures, unstable intersections between dream layers, paths that should not hold for long. The figure pointed toward one of them. "There," it said. But once you enter, you might not return to the same level again. She looked at the fracture. It wasn't a door anymore. It was movement, uncertainty made visible, and behind her, the system's awareness tightened again, like it had confirmed her direction. For the first time, it reacted faster than she could understand. She didn't move at first, not because she was frozen, but because the fracture in front of her felt unstable in a way that didn't invite certainty. It wasn't a door she could trust. It was change itself, barely holding its shape. Behind her, the presence inside the system was still there. Not closer, not further, just more defined, as if it had stopped searching and started confirming. The figure beside her spoke quickly now. "This is the only way out of this layer," it said, "but it won't take you where you expect." She looked at it. "Where will it take me?" It hesitated. "Somewhere the system hasn't stabilized yet." That answer wasn't comforting. The pressure around them increased slightly, not crushing, but aligning, like everything was slowly agreeing on one direction. She understood something important then. This wasn't about escape anymore. It was about position. She stepped forward. The moment she did, the fracture reacted, not opening like a door, but unfolding like a mistake being used as a path. The space behind her shifted sharply. She felt it. The system noticed her movement fully now, and it responded. The figure reached out slightly, but didn't stop her. "You'll lose continuity," it said. She turned her head slightly. "What does that mean?" "You may not return to the same version of yourself." That sentence should have stopped her, but it didn't, because something inside her already understood. She was not in a stable identity anymore. She was in movement, and staying meant being mapped completely. She stepped into the fracture. The world didn't break. It split into layers she couldn't name, into spaces that didn't behave like places anymore. For a moment, there was nothing stable. Only transition, only drift. Then silence. Not empty silence, reset silence. When she opened her eyes again, she was standing somewhere unfamiliar. Not a hallway, not a room, not a dream she had seen before. A place without structure, where the system hadn't fully arrived yet. The air felt lighter, but also incomplete, like reality was still deciding what it was here. She turned slowly, no figure beside her now, no doors, no defined path, only possibility. And then she realized something even deeper. The presence that had been tracking her was quieter here, not gone, just unable to fully define her position. For the first time, she was not inside a known layer. She was between definitions, and far away, somewhere inside the system, something recalculated her existence again. She stood in the undefined space for a long time. There was no hallway now, no doors, no paths that suggested direction, only a quiet, unstable reality that felt like it had not yet decided what to become. And for the first time since it began, she was not being guided, not observed in a clear way, not pulled toward anything specific. The system she had felt everywhere before was still there, but distant now, like an echo that had lost precision. She looked down at her hands. They felt the same, but something inside her had changed completely, not broken, not replaced, rewritten. She understood now what the figure meant. She was not someone entering dreams. She was the point where transitions happened, the place between one state and another, a function inside the system, not a visitor to it. And when she became aware of that, she stopped being invisible to it. That was the risk. That was the shift. The awareness around her tried to reestablish structure. She could feel it faintly, like a distant attempt to map where she now existed. But here, the system had no stable reference. She was outside its certainty, and that made her untraceable. For now, a thought crossed her mind, not spoken, just understood. If she stayed here, she would remain undefined, but she would also remain free. If she returned, she would become part of the structure again, visible, placed, known. There was no right answer, only consequence. The space around her softened slightly, like it was waiting for a decision that only she could make. And then she realized something else. This place she was in now wasn't empty. It was quiet because it was waiting to be shaped by awareness, by presence, by choice. She took a slow breath, and instead of searching for a way back, she focused on what was in front of her. The system was no longer just something she moved through. It was something that reacted to her attention, to her stability, to her awareness of it. And for the first time, she did not think of escape. She thought of understanding. Far away inside the structure she had left, something paused again, not hunting, not correcting, just waiting. Because now she was no longer just inside the dreams. She was between them. And anything that exists between states cannot be fully controlled. She stood there, still, present, and aware, not lost, not found, simply becoming. And the system did not close around her. It adjusted,